Hey everybody, it's great to see you guys again. Thank you for joining us today. We welcome our guest, the lovely and amazing and super inspiring Marlon West. Marlon is a head of effects at Disney currently and has a resume that's just bananas. So Marlon worked on everything from like Fern Gully, Bebe's Kids. I love that movie, man. Bebe's Kids. The Lion King, a Goofy movie, Pocahontas, Hunchback of Notre Dame, Hercules, Mulan, Tarzan, all the way up to even when 2D sort of made its comeback, and CG too. You worked on Chicken Little,
Yep.
Robinsons. You were there when 2D made its comeback with
Yep.
Princess and the Frog, Winnie the Pooh, Frozen, and was most currently head of effects animation on Frozen 2, which is cool. That doc just dropped on Disney Plus. So welcome, Marlon. Thanks, man. It's great to have you.
That's a long resume, and I gotta say, you look younger than us up here. It might just be your Zoom screen. I don't know, but I mean, what's that? 25 years?
I think I have that touch up my appearance.
that filter. Yeah, I saw a little sparkle happening.
Yeah, I may or may not.
Yeah.
I can confirm nor deny.
Well, and I just want to give a real quick intro before Marlon gets started. I've gotten to know Marlon over the last couple of years at Disney really well, and we worked together on both Moana, but really closely on Frozen 2.
Oh yeah, brother.
And, yeah, I got to say, Marlon he leads by example. He's just one of the, Bobby, I would say he's one of the coolest people we probably know.
He's probably the coolest guy I know, and when I'm around him, I'm like 50% cooler.
Yeah.
A lot more chill.
I try to make it contagious, the coolness. Cool factor.
It is, and that's what I was going to say about working with Marlon on Frozen 2. Like, and Marlon, I probably never told you this before, but I would get excited to walk into a meeting and see you there because you're just that guy that like you're like, even in your most stressed moments, you're the chillest guy in the room. You're relaxed, nothing gets to you. And you're always, even in those rooms where everyone's stressed and everyone's tired, you're the vocal guy that, I could be talking out there and I hear you in the back go, yeah. Mm-hmm. And I love that, man. And it was always, I knew if I was walking into a meeting with you that the day was going to get a lot better. So you're a by example.
I actually feel the same way about you. Yeah, you have you both actually have, a real kindness that you go through the world on an infectious kind of kindness that is, I don't know, it's really, really cool. So
that's awesome.
I really appreciate that, man. But things do bother me. I try not to let it show too much. Check in with me at like 2:30 a.m. I'll be like, but
well,
you don't let it show.
Of showing it. I wanted to give credit to Gabriel in the Q&A. He just said, I just wanted to say it's inspiring to see a brother doing great things with Disney animation. It's very inspiring and motivating as a Black artist. So,
well, thank you, Gabriel. I try, and but part of the reason we're here is to kind of like lead by example and try to like hold some doors open for other folks that kind of come in and give some information on how to do what we're doing.
Yeah.
How to make your own kind of journey, dreams kind of come true if you're starting out in this game, because there's a lot of folks that will say no, to you when you're starting out. Yeah. And it's funny, like I really thank you guys and Frank for kind of kicking this door open for people and making it possible for folks to get some real workable information from people that are in the game right as we speak. So this is invaluable. I mean, when I started out, I didn't know anybody, I don't mean to go into my old man voice, but there wasn't no DVD extras. There was no nothing. It was just it was clueless, and I don't know if you want me to go through my little
I was gonna, yeah. I mean,
historical biological spiel, but I don't know. Did you guys have questions? I don't know.
I wanted to ask Marlon because I don't know if we've ever had these conversations, but like growing up, like where'd you grow up? Were you one of those kids that was like the drawer of the class and all
Yeah, I was that nerdy. We didn't have the word nerd, or actually we have blurred now for black nerd. That didn't exist when I was a kid. I think the term that was used for me when I was growing up was just jive. I was jive. I was a little jive brother. Yeah. So yeah, I was always in the books, always in the drawing, animation. Well, not even animation, but comic books and things like that.
Yep.
And I was really into monster movies. That was like my jam.
Oh.
And so how I got into animation was how much I loved like King Kong and the Universal horror films and things like that. Yep. And I when I was a kid, like the bookmobile would come to our school, like this big van, use the frame, pull up, and you climb up in there, and and they had like a fraction of the books from your local library, and you could order books. You could be like, I'd like this, that they had like a small example of their filing system on the bus, or you could even tell one of the librarians, like, I'm really interested in this. And so I found some book on monster movies, Universal monster movies, or just monster movies in general. I can't remember what it was. I would love to find it. And I found this photo of Willis O'Brien, who animated King Kong in 1933 version. And I think this picture may have been from like 1928 when he was working on The Lost World. And so this was like a lot of like publicity photos where like, somebody's all like, so Willis O'Brien, he's like 35 years old. He's like got a fedora on, suit and stuff. And he's like animating, like a Tyrannosaurus, like fighting a Triceratops. And he's like, and I'm like, damn, to my 7-year-old brain, I was like, man, that's a job where a grown man could bring his toys to work with. I need that. And that was the thing that just drove me to, want to like make movies. That's all I knew about it. That these things, I was so far like, living in St. Louis, I didn't know anybody in the industry. Movies could have been like made on another planet, shot in a rocket into your living room through your TV or into a movie theater. That's how far away Hollywood, that's how foreign movies were to me. But I loved them. I loved watching them, and I loved drawing. But when I saw that picture of Willis O'Brien, I started seeing other pictures of like, behind the scenes. And it's so funny. I must have been like in my early 20s before I ever, heard somebody say The 9 Old Men, or before I got my hands on The Illusion of Life. Yeah. It was all like stop motion. It was all like Willis O'Brien and Ray Harryhausen for me.
Yeah. Marlon, did you know when you were 7 looking at that picture, did you understand how animation was made? Did you understand the concept of like stop motion and
not at that moment. All I knew is that this guy was making this, and it took a couple of years before I realized that they were being made like a frame at a time, that these were like armatures. People were like taking a picture and moving them. And it almost just came, my knowledge of it almost came from just needing.
Hey, Frank.
Oh, what's up, man? Keeping that serious social distance.
Mr. West.
Delicious.
Sorry, I'm at the grocery store.
All right.
Mr. West.
Handle your business, man. But it's funny. I kind of like learned animation just because my parents gave me like a movie camera for my like 12th birthday because I wanted to make movies.
Yep.
And I had all these ideas of films I wanted to make, and I would write these little like scripts on like notebook paper, and I'd be like, everybody meet me in the schoolyard and we're going to make this movie. And it's would either like not show up, and so everybody on this call knows me, that I'm a diminutive brother, always have been. And people who don't know me, I look gigantic here in my little archway. But I was always the smallest kid in class growing up, and so I show up at the schoolyard, all little, and trying to direct folks, my kids older than me, kids younger than me, and they all either didn't show or had their own ideas and would just kind of wild out. Like I could count on my brother Tony. That was like the only cat I could count on. So I decided to like start doing these like stop motion films with all my like G.I. Joes and things like that and action figures. And it was funny because like my scale went down, but my production value went up because like suddenly everybody had like dope vehicles and guns and costumes. So like I wanted to make a horror film. I could just buy a Frankenstein action figure and move him around, and it was cool. So I knew stuff was like animated films were done like a frame at a time, but like I had a Super 8 camera and all I was doing was like pulling the trigger on it, and so it would shoot like 4 frames or 8 frames or 6 frames. So my films were like slideshows. They were like, and I was 12, so I didn't have the attention for, in betweens or like super kind of subtle movements. It would just be like.
Do you have any of those? I want to see. I want to see it.
And that's how I learned. It was just kind of like, totally just like failure, after time. That's another thing, kids. Don't be afraid. Don't be afraid to fail over and over again. Because
hey, Marlon, did you have a group of friends that liked making films too? Like, did you have a crew?
No, I had my brother. That was like it.
That's it.
He helped me out. Like I was doing it kind of on the semi down low, because they were lousy, and then it was kind of jive to do. So it wasn't like the movie version of my life would be like. I throw like a fake marquee up in front of my house, like Marlon's new movie's out, and all the kids from the neighborhood, let's go down in his basement and watch this Super 8 film. These films were like shown to my brother, parents, and cousins, and some of my jiver friends.
See, I was gonna ask about that.
Time, Marlon.
See, what was that climate like? Like, it was not the cool thing to be making movies or to be playing with cameras and stuff like what was the reason to like keep it to
it wasn't the cool thing to be trying to make movies or playing with cameras, or I'll be honest, playing with G.I. Joe still. I was like, don't make these films in the front yard. They had to be out in the back. They had to be in the backyard. Like me on my hands and knees, like putting 2 G.I. Joes in positions. Was not a cool look in my neighborhood growing up. So
how did you move then from like comics and stop motion films, G.I. Joes, to like getting your hands on the Illusion of Life, or was there someone you met in St. Louis, or
it was in college, so I knew what I was missing, but I think by high school, I think, I was aware of like Acme peg bars and that there were animation cameras, but I didn't know anybody with one. I didn't know any place to go to get like pre-cut paper or even acquire an Acme peg bar. I think my first semester in college was like, here's your plastic peg bar, and here's some paper to start drawing on. And so then I started leaning into like hand-drawn animation because that was the thing. I was doing stop motion with either action figures or clay, claymation. I was a big fan of a lot of the stuff that was being done, National Film Board of Canada, and I was a really big fan of Malcolm McLaren. So I actually started doing a lot of like pixelated films where I had a couple of people who was athletic enough and willing enough to kind of like, especially by the time I got to high school, I had a couple of folks that were playing along. They would like jump up in the air and look like they were flying, like keep jumping and I catch them, and so there was but I didn't have what I would call like a tribe. I had a couple of like like undercover collaborators, There are a couple of people who were like more popular than I was. They would be like, Marlon, I'll help you out, but don't show anybody this mess.
Yeah, only in the backyard.
I'm trying to get a sense of like, so you're starting out in 2D animation. Was there a movie or another interview with someone in animation that sort of inspired you, or you know, something that helped you like catch the bug at that point?
Well, you know, so now I'll go even further back, but I had, like, the first movie I ever saw in the theater was The Jungle Book, you know, and that just like blew my mind. So I was really into the Jungle Book. And, you know, and then I was seeing a lot of like Disney films be re-released, you know, throughout my childhood, you know, Robin Hood, and, you know, actually that may have been first run when I was a kid. That's how old I am. But then I really kind of dug some of the films that like Ralph Bakshi was made in like late 70s, you know, Wizards, and, you know, he was, you know, using the combination of like hand-drawn animation and like, well, we would call it mocap now, but like rotoscope. They would go out and film things and then trace over it. Did a film called American Pop that came out, you know, in the early 80s that I really liked. I kind of liked his mashup of like his live action sensibility and kind of, you know, grown up subject matter, you know.
Yeah.
And so I was really kind of into that. So when I was in college, I was thrilled to actually be able to do real 2D drawings on a peg bar and have an animation camera. And then I was also studying film. You know, I was studying live action film as well. So we were making short films, and so people would actually show up and actually act. And, you know, so I made some shorts, you know, in college too. So it was actually a period where I was just feeling like a real filmmaker. You know, I was making these little animated shorts for school. And
so that program in Chicago was all film. It was more of a film course, and
I was in the film department. Yeah. So, you know, Columbia College, which is still there, is now one of the biggest film schools in the country. At the time, I think I was one of a handful of people that weren't from Chicago that was going there. You know, I had, it was what they called in those days a commuter school that most people, and it was a school that a lot of people went to take some classes to kind of direct themselves to something they wanted to do professionally. And then, so not too many people in those days started as a freshman, went through as a senior, or even did like graduate school work. And, you know, it was just like, I'd like to get into radio, or I'd like to get into film. So I'm going to take these classes so I can get grip work or PA work, or become an assistant editor. And, you know, it would take X amount of classes. A lot of my classmates already had degrees from other schools that they were like, I don't like this. So I'm going to go to Columbia and take these classes. So it was, and so most of the instructors there were, you know, industry professionals around Chicago at the time. So that was actually kind of cool. So you actually felt like you were, you know, learning from people who were out there doing it.
So did you get your start in animation in Chicago?
Yes.
They got a small industry, right?
Have a small industry, and it was so small, didn't have room for me. So I pivoted, and one of my instructors worked at directing educational films for Encyclopedia Britannica. And what they were doing, you know, he was a very clever cat. He looked around and saw all these Columbia students that knew how to animate, had taken film classes. So he kind of, is kind of in the early 80s, no, late 80s, I'm sorry, mid to late 80s, because I graduated high school, college. And they were getting rid of a lot of more kind of like, you know, professionals that had been making these educational films for a long time. And my boss was just like, he just kept hiring Columbia students. After a while, all we were doing was, we were like writing the scripts for these things. We were doing the storyboards. We were acting in them. We'd go out and film the live action. Some of us would act in them. We'd get friends to stay in, you know, we'd hire people in them. And we'd do all the animation for them too. So we were like this one-stop shop. You know?
That's a cool way to get experience.
It was a really cool way to get experience. I won't say his name because it's recorded, but it was you know, it was not a great boss. It was like, you know, all the things I've learned about leadership, it was kind of like turning how he did things on it, on its ear.
Right.
Did you have like a mentor figure there coming out of school?
You know, it was funny. Well, not really. I had a couple of friends. I had a friend named Jeff who worked at Columbia with me. I shared my office with him. And, this is kind of a weird thing. This is more of a personal thing, but I had been a student from like kindergarten till like my early 20s. I never took a year off or anything like that. And when I graduated from college, I was like, oh, I'm not learning anything anymore. I'm just going to spend the rest of my life like getting dumber. I was not like an avid reader, so I was just kind of like, I had this crisis where I'm like, I felt really adrift as like, I'm not going to learn anything anymore. I'm just going to work with the stuff that I have. I've learned a lot of stuff since then, but like, the first couple of years out of college, that's how I felt. So I had this guy, Jeff Ozier, who I worked with, who was an avid reader and loved music. And we just sat there with like bringing cassette tapes in every day, just like, oh, here's Kate Bush, or here's Christoph Penderecki, or here's Charlie Parker, or here's the Smiths, and it was just like all day long, we were just like turning each other on into new music. And we'd go to the bookstore, and almost every lunch, and we buy books, and like I said, he read like a book a week or two a week. And we would, he turned me on to a lot of authors, William Faulkner and William Gibson, and just like Gabriel Garcia Marquez. And so it wasn't like he was a mentor for being a young adult, actually, not necessarily life, but not necessarily like work, but for life. He really kind of like gave me a springboard of like, oh, how I'm going to proceed forward. I'm just going to become a reader.
Right.
He was really dumb to say that. He was a great role model for like being a reader.
Mm-hmm.
And every book, he had this rule about every book was like an antidote to the book he just read. So like, if you read like Stephen Jay Gould, the next book would be like James M. Cain. It was just like, if it was fiction, then it would be nonfiction. If it was like serious literary stuff, then it was just like a graphic novel. It was just like everything was like, phew, phew, phew. That's still how I kind of roll to this day.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I mean, that's this. Go ahead, Frank.
Oh, I was gonna say this may be more on the personal side, but I'm curious what on the family side. You mentioned making these films with your brother and showing them to your your parents and stuff. Like, what was were they very supportive with wanting you to push and pursue something within that realm of filmmaking? And
yeah, thanks, Frank. Thanks for asking, because my parents were super supportive. I don't know if my mom was on this, but they were like super. See, yeah, she doesn't know how to work Zoom, so we're good. Yeah. But they were super supportive. I mean, for two people, like, everybody on this call has a career right now. And most of the people who are listening and watching this either have earlier in their careers or are looking to have careers too. But my parents had jobs, and you all may know the difference between a career and a job, but they just worked. They were working people, and they both were high school educated. Both still have. I'm talking in the past tense, but I'm talking about when they were raising my brother and I. So this was just like, they didn't have any connections in the industry. They just worked jobs to like put food on the table for my brother and I. And for me to be all like, I want to be a movie maker, and they were like,
yeah,
and they never ever was just like, you need a job that pays. They never said anything like that. All they did was like, drive me to the comic book store, take me to the photo mat to pick up my film and stuff like that. Never hesitated for a minute.
I always wonder about that because of security.
If they laid there in bed together going like, Marlon, crazy. I don't know what I'm doing. I hope he makes it. They didn't, sitting at the breakfast table or dinner table or driving us around, never let on that they had any fear.
Nice. That must have empowered you more to continue to do what you wanted to do, because I think sometimes when you're growing up and you have that, if you have the parents that really want you to do something that has some kind of security, you kind of, you have this sense of like, I want to make them proud and stuff, but it's the same on the flip side, if they're really supporting what you want to do.
It's very
like, man,
true.
I want to show them this. I want to make them
It's very
see
true,
what I'm doing.
I had a lot of friends that when I was in junior high school and early days of high school that I just genuinely thought were more talented than me. They just had it. They could just draw. I had this brother, Stan Henderson. His brother could just draw his ass off. And he was like, we would be these little partner in crime. We would meet at the library and draw comic books and stuff. And instead of YouTube, we went to the library. There was no YouTube. We would just like go to bookshelves and just bring books to the table and just like figure out how to draw stuff or just literally read. But he and a lot of my other friends just like, when it became time to really get serious about what they were going to do for a living, felt either a pressure or more interest in other things. And so, yeah, I never got any of that. Like, you need to do something that really makes more sense, Marlon,
Yeah, that's so cool.
So very fortunate. The other thing too, especially in the speaking about my parents, they never were full of a lot of like racial animus. They never, like, they both came up in like segregated St. Louis where they couldn't go into restaurants. Actually, when I was a little kid, like when I was in kindergarten, I couldn't go on like on a school trip to this amusement park called Holly Hills that used to exist still in St. Louis because it was white only. And we were like one of the first Black families in this neighborhood. So like kindergarten school trip, I had to stay home. But my parents never like talked a lot about like when I was a little kid, I couldn't go here and I couldn't go to that park. They couldn't do it. And there was another thing that they kind of emboldened my brother and I. We were just like, we could do anything. At least he wasn't jive, but I was jive. So like anybody who didn't like me, it was because I was jive. I didn't have a jerry curl. I didn't, I wasn't cool, but I didn't feel like I had anything stacked against me for my Blackness because of the way that they kind of rolled, I remember.
Marlon, that's early 60s. Is that?
I was born in 63. So I started kindergarten like in 1968. So that was kind of late 60s.
Yeah.
Martin Luther King.
Yeah.
So at that time, were you exposed to, because you mentioned going in 1968, thinking of, Dr. King and just the I'm curious if at that young age with everything going on, did you have any moments where your parents kind of sat you down and explained kind of how the world is at this moment, or was it kind of like, as a kid, just being able to be a kid and just,
No.
exploring on your own?
I was just able to be a kid. I had, I got the talk that every kind of young Black male gets, and probably increasingly Black girls and probably some white males do nowadays, about how to behave when police pull you over. I got that talk, but that was actually more as a teenager. I remember learning about Martin Luther King, but I also remember feeling like it was like history. I remember like doing writing a book report, and doing a drawing of him. And it seems really bizarre to say this, I'm almost embarrassed to say it, but it had the relevance of like the Boston Tea Party for me as like a second or third grader. It was like, this is part of the world that made my world possible. These people fought the British, and this brother died for civil rights, and now I'm here.
Mm-hmm.
And that's honestly, like, for an embarrassingly long amount of time in my life, that's kind of how I rolled. I was just kind of like, oh yeah, these Martin Luther King, Malcolm X, these people were figures in my parents' youth, but they were like young parents. That's the thing. The difference between me as a little baby and me as a 13 or 14-year-old, the life that my parents were raising me in when I was really little, that was my lifetime, but it didn't impact me because I was like top.
Yeah.
I was watching Batman on TV, That's what I was all about.
Mhm.
Yeah, that's it. And Marlon, did you have people then to look up to Black artists, either in the comic book world or in the animation world that you could look up to?
You know, it's a funny thing, you know, knowing we were going to have this conversation, I did not have any Black artists that I was aware of as a kid, or even early on in my career. You know, it's just like when I was starting out, I was just looking for like Black people who actually had the same interest. I was just content to just be like not laughed out of the room, you know, but based on like, oh, here's somebody who also knows who Green Lantern is, you know. I'm like, all right, cool, you know. I mean, that sounds really silly, but I was content just to have somebody who like could sit through Jason and the Argonauts, you know, and you know, not go running out of the room.
You wanted to find your people.
Yeah, I was just looking for like a tribe, you know.
Yeah.
And so like it wasn't until I mean, dude, I was like 27 years old or something, and I moved out here and I started meeting some of the friends that I have now and colleagues.
Peter Ramsey.
Like Peter Ramsey, I met that brother in 1989 when I first moved here. Him and his brother Eric were like two of my very best friends. And, you know, and when I met these cats, I was all like, you know, just like, you know, we make the same jokes and stuff like that. And so then then when I met.
And you all love Green Lantern too. So
Yeah. Well, I don't even know why I mentioned Green Lantern. You know, Black people love Marvel. I don't know. But he's not even an obscure. He should have made somebody more obscure. You got or something. That would have been a better line.
There we go.
But it wasn't like a lot of the people that like became my friends when I first moved here, like Bruce Smith. I think I remember meeting him like on Bebe's Kids.
Yeah.
Even before Baby's Kids, like Rover Dangerfield. I remember getting like my first job in animation. So like a lot of the folks that I you know, they would become like my mentors and things like that. You know, were my peers and things like, you know, when I first came to Disney, like Floyd Norman was still like working there, you know. He did boards on The Lion King. And so that was, you know, I met him early on in my Disney career. But, you know, there's Black artists that I kind of, you know, have admired over the years, but yeah, as the people that were like my role models were like white, you know. They were just, you know, I was a big Neil Adams fan and Jack Kirby fan. And like I said, I was a big fan of like Ray Harryhausen. And I just looked at people who were doing stuff that I thought was interesting and wanted to do, and just kind of like, just went in that direction. You know?
Yeah, that visibility is super important, because I mean it's good that, you know, you're able to have your own path set and keep that motivation, even if you don't see people that look like you. But like, it's so much more. It adds so much more fuel when you do, because I remember seeing you and Bruce on YouTube before I went to Disney. I saw you and Bruce on a YouTube video. It was one of the later ones was Princess and the Frog. And I remember when I started at Disney, I passed you in the hallway and I was like, "Are you Marlon West?" and like, and that was my introduction, because I'm like putting the face to it, and it was just refreshing to see, first of all, someone else that looked like me on you know, like in you know, special features or interviews type thing, but then walk in the hall and having you know, cross paths like that was a big moment.
I've got to say, you know, I agree. I remember when you were there, and it's always, not to sound kind of sad or anything, but like sometimes you don't realize what you're missing something until you see it. You know, when you're there. And I was just like, you know, it's like, you know, I go through life, and you know, I mean, you know, that's a cool building full of people that are trying to be talented. You know, they're talented and trying to make a good movie, and everybody's cool. They treat me with respect, and you know, but like, you get with some Black people and you have this kind of shorthand, or you know, you look up and you see somebody doing what you're trying to do, and it's emboldening, you know, and it's you know, you get this reminder that you've had this little hole in your heart that you're like, oh damn, I didn't realize this.
Yeah,
So,
it's like you stepping on a hole.
I'm
that
so
has
used to
dirt,
being
there grass over it. You didn't know it was
the
there.
brother, you know. But yeah. But you know, part of the reason I'm here is to try to get more of us in the game. You know, because I do think a lot of people, and I think it's very reasonable. It's hard to see yourself doing something if you don't see somebody like yourself doing it. You know, and I was relatively kind of delusional and kind of crazy and was just kind of going for it without that. But so many people, you know, I can't imagine like if I was aware of a black director or a black head of effects or a black character animator, you know, that was super badass. You know, if I was aware of Floyd Norman's existence when I was like a kid, I would have been, maybe I would not have even been so jab. I would have been like, I'm being an animator, you know? You know, so I feel like I pulled full speed ahead, but dude, I may have been like supercharged, like, you know, like, you know, like Thunderdome or something like when they put, you know, if I knew there were some brothers, you know, out there doing it, you know?
Yeah.
I can't imagine supercharged Marlon.
I'm curious with how your path was, like what were the just to kind of go on the flip side, because it's always enlightening. I think it's still enlightening for me when I see people who are just, you know, doing it well, you know, like having just knowing more on the struggles that it was like for you, breaking into the industry. Like did you have any of those struggles, or did you have any moments, you know, getting getting to a level you wanted to be in where you questions if it was this was the thing? Or
you know, I had struggles, man, because when I moved here, I didn't have any job prospects. I just had like a couple of friends who were here already. They said I could sleep on their floor. And I was glad there was two of them, because then I would like go back and forth, like, oh, your lady's coming over. I'm going to go over to Mark. You know,
yeah.
all right, that's cool. You know, and I say sleep on the floor because that's what I was on a sleeping bag. And so all I had was like a sleeping bag and some things, and a copy of Animation magazine that in those days you would have a directory edition every year. And I wasn't interested in working at Disney. I didn't think that was for me. I just wanted to get like a job, you know, an animation career. And so had a directory of all these smaller studios, including Disney. But all I did was like sit on the phone with this like notepad, like call in places. And because I was coming from Encyclopedia Britannica, where we did everything, I mean, I literally was like, hey, I'm Marlon. I just moved here from Chicago and I do animation. And then anybody on the phone in this town was like, what do you mean do animation? What do you do? Everything. They were like, pick a lane, you know, I'm an animator, you know. And I wish I could remember who it was, but they looked at all this artwork I had from like Encyclopedia Britannica of like scientific illustration and like bronchial tubes filling with mucus or oxygen molecule going through like a forest of nose hairs. And they were like, you know, you should do effects. And then I just started saying like, I do effects. I was just like, hi, I'm Marlon and I do effects. And you know, the first time like somebody hired me to do it, I had to like figure out, you know, how. And fortunately it wasn't like on like an animated feature or anything, but you know, I assisted a woman named Kathleen Quaife Hodge, who really, so I'm gonna answer your question in this roundabout way. I was lucky to have some really cool mentors who like took a chance on me early on. A cat named Chris Cassidy used to have this studio called Roto Effects of America. He did a lot of like the lightning effects, shooting out of the hand, lightning from the original Highlander and for Big Trouble in Little China. And he did like a lot of these things that were now computer generated, but like at the time you would like you would project live action on your animation stand footage down and do like a light tracing of the character, you know, and then draw with like usually a black Sharpie, lightning or whatever, the explosion or sparks or tracer fire or whatever it was you were doing. And he did that. And he hired me early on, and I worked on this Beastie Boys video with him, you know, and I worked with Kathleen Quaife Hodge on this, doing rotoscoped effects animation on this California Raisin commercial where Michael Jackson is a California Raisin.
Yes.
It's on the YouTubes. Check it out.
I've seen it.
And so like what Kathleen was doing was just making dots. And my job as her assistant was to turn these dots into like little stars and pixie dust, like to, you know, randomly make, you know, one of them turn into a star and then pop and go away. And that's kind of how I learned. And I was actually working on some other film with Chris, and she called me looking for like, she called Chris and I answered the phone looking for like a tax form. Like she had never 1099 from that year or something from Chris. And I was like, oh, Kathleen, what are you doing? She's like, I'm working on this film called Rover Dangerfield about Rodney Dangerfield as an animated basset hound. Why don't you come over here and be my assistant? And
Nice.
I did. I went over after this thing was over. And so she was another mentor. She literally taught me how to draw dirt and splashes and things like that. I was her assistant, and then I ended up getting promoted to animator on that film. But I have had times, like when I first actually started at Disney, you know, they hired me as a trainee. And like right now, Disney has a program that identifies really, really good people, like in college or right after college, that are like badass. And like almost every department has one or two of these people that are like stellar. But when I came in, I was like 10 years in the game, and they were just looked at my stuff and they were like, damn, brother, you just not all that. I'll tell you what, you can come here as a trainee. And I was mad, dude. I was up on my hind legs. I was like, and you know, it was a pay cut, you know, because, and I remember talking to my mom about it. And, you know, Saturday I was like, Mom, you know, you want me to come here as a trainee? And I make blah, blah, blah right now. And they want me to come in here for some Rudy Poo yakety yak. And like my mom went real quiet on the phone for a minute. And she was like, well, Marlon, the whole time we were raising your brother and you, we didn't come anywhere near yakety yak or blah, blah, blah. And I just was like, yeah. So I called up Monday. I took the gig. And because I was a trainee, it was during the Lion King. So it was like, they were wilding out. 12 hours a day. You know how we do when we're trying to finish a movie. I was a trainee. And so I couldn't work on that. I was being paid out of another budget, like all trainee programs. So I was like reanimating splashes from Bambi or smoke from The Little Mermaid. And at 6 o'clock, I'd be like, bye. You know, you know, they were like lining up for the overtime dinner, and I'm like,
you know, Marlon, we've talked about like the importance of that training program, you know, at that point in your career, and I love the personal story you told about, you know, your friend in college just kind of teaching, like from the outside looking in at your career, you're a very curious person. Like you even now, like you're always wanting to learn and grow, and you switch to CG and 2D in the training program. You go in the deep end and you kind of learn. And I love that about you. Like I admire that because you're just always growing. Like how much was that a part of your training?
You know, I was trying, because that was a long way to get around to Frank's question about, there were some people who were animators, effects animators in that department that just were not down with me getting promoted, you know, and I could really, really feel it. And, you know, the head of effects on Lion King really kind of leaned into like giving me some stuff to do. Like they were like, dude, let this brother draw some shadows under Simba, you know, or something, just the basic stuff. Because they were like, how's he getting out of here at 6, you know? And And, you know, I just was feeling, because it took me about half a day to realize that I was like, oh, they were right. I ain't all that. You know, I'm like, I need to learn some shit, you know, with quickness, you know. And I, you know, at the time, you know, I was working at Disney here in Burbank. I was living in Silver Lake. And so it was like a 10-minute drive down the 5 freeway into Los Feliz Boulevard and jump off there, man. I would say like almost every day I was just driving through the park, like, oh, damn, I need all the time I can get out of this drive.
I like how you're holding the big steering wheel, like the whole car.
Yeah, I was like, I'm a visual storyteller, Frank. I was driving like that, but yeah,
Yeah.
But I was very aware that not everybody was rooting for me, you know, and because we're being recorded, those folks will remain nameless. But it made for a stressor, you know. And but most of my career, I've felt very fortunate that, you know, I came here when I did, when animation was entering this renaissance in 1989, you know, like the Simpsons were going from these like bumpers and the old Tracy Ullman show to their own show. And, you know, Disney was in the middle of this renaissance, you know, enough that people were making films like Bebe's Kids and Rover Dangerfield. You know, like half the people I was working on Rover Dangerfield with were coming back into the game after being out of it for a while. You know, you know, I was teaching school, I was doing this, and this is that first. I'm thrilled to be back doing an animated film. And so I've been lucky. I mean, it's been stressful and I've had to work hard, but
I think to me, Marlon, too, like one of the things that speaks to your tenacity is weathering your career through the transition that Disney went through from like 2D to 3D. It couldn't have been easy.
No, it was not.
Can you sort of like enlighten me on how you sort of made that transition and what the challenges were and kind of, you know?
Well, I mean, it feels even absurd to say it now because it seems so long ago. But, you know, there was a period where we were doing 2D films, and, you know, Pixar had Toy Story and Bugs Life, I think, had already been made. And then it was like James and the Giant Peach and Nightmare Before Christmas. And it was kind of like, there's room for all this animation. We do hand-drawn, beautiful hand-drawn animation, and Pixar makes these things about bugs and toys and ants. And we, you know, and there's these puppets, and, you know, we're doing this. And you know, everybody was kind of, I won't say everybody, but like, you know, folks were kind of chugging along with that expectation. And at least for me, the wake-up call for me was seeing the teaser trailer for The Incredibles, where like Mr. Incredible is in, it's not even a film, it's not even a shot, the test scene. He's like in his den, and he's like, it's fat Mr. Incredible, and he's like trying to put his utility belt on over his gut. And it's like a locked off camera, and he's just jumping around in frame. And I saw that and I'm like, that's an appealing human character right there.
Right.
I'm like, jig is up. That's how I felt. I felt like I needed to start training up immediately. And I started taking like night classes, you know, through the union. Key Song, who's Mark, you know, top effects animators at the time, he taught a class to myself, and a bunch of people taught us how to do Maya. And I was like, I mean, if you know Key, he's just like such a warm and kind brother. And, you know, he would show us a bunch of stuff. And he was like, I don't use this, and I don't use this. So you know, that's how I do this, and don't worry about that. And at least for me, it made it like very gettable. He made it feel very gettable.
Yeah, he's such a gentle, nice guy too.
Dude, so I owe a lot to him, you know. And he was also, and then I started casting myself you know, because I was like the head of effects on Atlantis and Home on the Range, and there was a bunch of kind of CG kind of effect stuff in there that no one was clamoring to do that I just did, you know, and so yeah, you know, then I was just on the crew of Chicken Little and Meet the Robinsons.
You just put in.
Yeah, it was an interesting transition because it was to go from being like really good at one thing to just kind of like serviceable at another thing. Like,
Sure.
it was just like just eyed again. And I guess I was still young enough that I guess that it was okay to start over again. I must have been in my like mid to late 30s or something, you know?
Yeah.
Did it kind of
I just love this stuff. You know, like it's different if you're a character animator because you're both either CG or hand drawn. Like your drawings and what you're doing is like your performance. This is you. One frame at a time, you're putting your stuff down. And I can totally understand why giving up drawing a character would be really hard for somebody who spent their career doing that. You know, they just want to find another place to keep doing it. I totally get it. But like as an effects artist, all of my drawings were like blurred because they were smoke or transparent. You know, all I've been about my whole career has been like just getting cool images up on screen. You know, it really didn't matter to me. I'm not speak for other people, but it doesn't matter if it was 2D or CG or clay or whatever. It's just I just want to tell stories and want to just make things look really cool, you know.
Right. If you guys haven't, to the attendees out there, YouTube, there's you, Marlon. YouTube, Marlon West effects, Vanity Fair. I just saw it yesterday. Watched it again.
Oh,
it's like has him geek out over effects in a way that is super inspiring, and someone in a way that is going back all the way to Cinderella to current stuff in Frozen. But that was really a treat. That was really fun.
That was one of the coolest opportunities because I love those notes on a scene, and they're usually like a writer director breaking down something that she or he has done. And when they asked me to do one, I was all like, "Really, me?" Really? I mean, Bobby, I gotta say, right up until I walked in and had them do it, I thought they were gonna cancel. Even after they filmed my ass, I was just like, hey, they're gonna edit this mess together and they're gonna be like, what were we thinking? And so it was a lot of fun to do. I really enjoyed doing it. I like, you know, love talking about effects and kind of breaking down kind of a through line of things that we've done for decades, both hand-drawn and CG. So it was a real honor and treat to do it.
Marlon,
I can't believe that stuff that I did that.
Yeah.
What's the effects movie that is like the quintessential, the thing you will always go back to and look at?
Man, I gotta say, and this is one reason, this is almost heresy, but like the Monstro scene in Pinocchio to me is like off the hook. You know, as effects animation, just beautifully hand-drawn water, character animation too. I'm not a film historian, but it's arguably one of the first cinematic effects set pieces in film. Maybe like the first 10 that are, you know, it's at least in the kind of modern way that we think of, like, you know, acting, effects, you know, all, you know, firing on the same cylinder. So when I look at some of the drawings like Josh Metter and people did for that water, I gotta say, man, I spent you know decades doing effects animation and never did anything as beautiful as that stuff in in Monstro. You know, I was just like, it was just amazing. So that's the one thing about working at least in effects in CG, that like what was okay like a decade ago is not okay now. You know, CG in general is constantly like kind of moving, and what was it was okay in Bolt. It did not look so. It would not cut mustard, and Frozen 2, and and as proud as I am of the water in Moana, maybe I'm 10 years from now I'll be like, that's kind of quaint, that water. I doubt it.
Seeing the jump in that stuff in years. I mean, Moana and Frozen 2 are just. I mean, the effects are just like, they're mind blowing. I mean, I get people messaging me all the time saying the animation's so beautiful in Moana. How did you do that water? And I'm like, oh yeah. Like, I think it's a compliment, but it's like,
yeah.
Can I ask a really geeky newbie question? How did they do that Monstro stuff? Is it like the splash? Is it just like a stipple?
It's like side of the pencil.
What?
Kind of,
really?
Side of a pencil?
Yeah, like pencil drawings. And painting, because they had to be on cell. So like blur, smear paintings. I was up in San Francisco at the Disney Family Museum a couple of years ago.
Yeah.
And they had a Pinocchio exhibit there, and they had a lot of those drawings and cell paint there. That's the other thing too, so many women were relegated to like ink and paint, and the stuff that they were being called on to do, as far as like translating like effects, drawings onto acetate was just amazing, or even like blush and shades and tones and things like that, the things they were doing was amazing.
Yeah.
A lot of artistry.
Yeah, for sure.
That's awesome. So we're approaching like an hour, and we want to be respectful of your time. Trent and Frank, if you guys had any questions you wanted to close with.
I got one. Just as you're embarking on the next journey of a filmmaker with the things you've been posting on Instagram with your short film and stuff, like what I guess what how can I phrase it? So what keeps you excited now with filmmaking after as you've been in it for so long, and also like you're still doing new stuff, like you're doing this short now, and like what's keeping that motivation going for you?
Well, I mean, as far as the Disney work is concerned too, like we just talked about, like the bar keeps moving, what we can do, the level of production value you can get on screen, even though there's a bunch of us in the building, there's folks I haven't worked with, I've known who Trent was for a long time, without getting on a film with him. So to me, that configuration of collaborators that are moving, and, it's like, I'm sitting on the phone with like you and Bobby, and I'm like, damn, I've never worked with y'all. That would be dope. I was just like, and so that continues to give me a lot of passion. And none of these films are, the technical and creative asks are always different. And then to be making my own short about things that I'm very passionate about, like music and like long friendships, it's like, I'll warn you guys, you'll never be rid of my ass. I'm like, I got a lot of friends I've had for decades. So, so I'm making this short about these brothers that go from like bitter enemies and brotherly love over the course of about 60 years. And it's a, the sense of friendship that people who've known you for decades know you in a way, whether they love you or not, they're like, oh, he really got my number, He really knows what's up. I got a shorthand. So that's something that's really important with me, and jazz is really important with me. So I've, I'm doing it, Disney kind of has a co-op, so you can work with people in the building. There's folks in the building that are helping out on it. There's folks that are outside of the building working on it, people I met on Instagram. And that's been a whole kind of trip, because it's like, some of it has just been like, I really like your stuff. I'm making a short film about And so it's been cool. I mean, there's people all around the world working on it. But as we know, all of us know who work in animation is like super slow. And I mean, you've made your own film, Frank. animation in your free time. Oh, and you, all of you have. I don't know what to say. Squeezing in animation in your free time is like glacial pace. You know, I would like to finish this before I'm 60.
You know, my question was, it's close to Frank's in that, like, I mean, it's just one of those things I admire about you is that you've been in the business so long, you're still working on your own, you still have stories to tell, you want to tell stories. And so I guess it's a two-part question. One is, if I'm a student watching right now, because I know, Marlon, you're a great teacher, you lead by example, and I want to help you out, I want to work on your film, how can I do that?
Hey, well, you know, I'm on Instagram, SDL, Marlon West, SDL, like St. Louis, Marlon West, one word. If you actually hashtag drum battle short, all the stuff that I've posted on Instagram will come up. And if it's something that you're interested in, you know, yeah.
That's awesome. And Marlon, just to kind of end that question, what are your goals? Like you've been doing this, it seems, I mean, you've done 2D, CG, you've worked on Frozen 2, Moana, all these cool things. Like what's next for you?
Oh man, I don't know. I mean, I would love to finish this short and
Yeah.
you know, maybe do another one or make some. Yeah, I don't know. I just love doing what I'm doing. You know, working with cool people, making films that people like. Because as we all know, well, actually, you all have been working on good movies your entire careers, as far as I know. But like, I worked on some whack flicks, and it's like it's no easier. It's no easier to make a bad movie. You know, it's like everybody works just as hard on the worst movie you've ever seen.
It's so true.
And so, I'm just really thrilled to actually be working on things that people like, you know, and see. And, you know, if I can keep doing it, I realize how lucky I am to actually have the opportunity to make things that people like and want to show their kids. And if they'll let me keep doing it for a while, I will.
That's awesome, man. Marlon, I'm someone that's working to get into the industry, let's say, and I'm working on my stuff at night after my 9 to 5. What are some of the sort of words of advice that you can give me for trying to get my foot in the door?
I will say, you know, you're going to get a lot of no's. Everybody you're going to talk to, with very few exceptions, unless they're a recruiter, that's their day job. Most people that you're going to talk to, they're trying to fit you. So put your best foot forward, put your best work out there as you can. Try to be really good. Now, that's simple. It's not easy. That's why they're two different words. Sometimes they use it, but they're not. But be really good and actually be self-critical too, because that's how you're going to get better. And when I say don't take no for an answer, what I mean is get a follow-up question to a no. Because when somebody explains to you why they're saying no, that's your clue, one of many clues to turn that next no to a yes. So when I say, like, somebody says no, that doesn't mean like, I'm not leaving your office, I'm not taking no for an answer, you're going to hire me. Not that, but try to what's going to turn your next no into a yes is what's behind that no. So ask a follow-up question when somebody says no. Ask for feedback every time, and do your homework. You know, make sure that the person you're talking to, you know their gender. You know, like it's not like dear Mr. Karen. You know, because that's going to turn a person off right off the bat. You know, do your homework. Figure out who you're applying to, who you're asking. Even if you're looking for a mentor. You know, make sure you know what he or she is about, you know, and go accordingly.
Right. Well, man, Marlon, this has been awesome. Wonderful.
Oh, this has been wonderful. I've been looking forward to this all week.
We love
Yes.
Thank you all for having me. Thanks for doing what you're doing.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm so sorry I've been so captivated looking at you all that I haven't read any of the chat.
You know, when we started Rise Up, Marlon, you were just like the first guy that came to mind. And like, I want to learn from you and hear you talk. And I feel like just sitting here listening to you, I learn as much as everyone else in the chat. This has been so cool.
Yeah.
Thank you all. Hey, let's do
Yeah.
it again. And you know, I'm down with looking at portfolios and stuff too, as you well know. So
Awesome.
Yeah.
all right.
Awesome.
Thanks
All right.
everybody.
Okay,
Thank you
Marlon,
so
take
much,
care.
Marlon. Appreciate it.
See you.
Bye.
Yeah.
Thank you. Wow. Cool.
That was cool.
Man, he's awesome. What a great storyteller.
Yeah.
Just like this,
Yeah.
you know, just kind of like really active, gestural. You could, you know, you could probably be a great character in there too. But
Yeah.
man, what a great storyteller. Awesome.
His voice is very similar to voice, Floyd Norman, and
Yeah.
and it's like a little mix of Floyd Norman and Paul Mooney,
Paul Mooney?
the comedian.
Oh.
He was on the Chappelle show back then.
I love his
Wayne
bit.
Brady.
I love that bit about deciding on the effects animations that seem so like gratuitous. It's like someone said you should do effects animation, and then he was like, "I'm doing effects animation."
Yeah.
I love how random that is. That guy probably changed his life.
It changed his life.
Yeah.
Yeah. What if he said, "Oh, you could be a background painter"?
He's like, "I'm doing that."
I guess I'm doing that now.
Yeah.
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 I love Marlon.
Yeah.
Great.
Yeah. I
Got
love
to
that
catch
story.
up with him in Annecy.
Oh yeah. Good. Oh cool. Yeah. Cool. Yeah.
I love that story too, because how many of us, like, I don't know about you guys, but man, when I was applying for my first jobs too, I was kind of like, I'll do anything.
Yeah.
And you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, I just want to work in the studio. I'll clean the bathroom wherever you want.
Yep. Absolutely.
Right? See, I'm seeing in the chat. I'll bring coffee. Yep.
I'll bring coffee.
See, I want to see all those movies they made back
Oh my goodness.
when he was young. Somebody has to have them.
I know. We should ask Marlon to dig them up. Anyone on the chat right now, if you can find online some of Marlon's movies, let us know.
Yeah. Oh my god.
I want to see some of those backyard GI Joes.
Oh my gosh. Yeah. I even like the bit at the end of just, it's so true, of just like turn like the no into like, okay, no, and what else, you know, turning that no into kind of like, well, like what kind of feedback can I get, you know, because the no's can be so discouraging, you know, especially when it's an automated email from a big animation studio.
Yeah.
It's just like, you know, and
Yeah.
but
what can I learn from that? No.
what can I learn from that? Yeah,
That's a big one.
yeah, that's a huge one.
Yeah, I love that. You know, I haven't heard that exact advice like that before. That
Right. And it's so
you know, I've heard the perseverance. You know, no, there's no amount of no's that will stop you, but not to like dig a little deeper and find out, you know, what you can do to change that no.
right. The note behind the note of no. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Frank, I gotta say, you make me feel lazy because you're like
What?
either you're like grocery store, Home Depot, cooking dinner, and we're just like Bobby and I are just we're like,
Dude, I mean,
Yeah, you're like thanks so much, Frank. You're
hot
like,
stickers and broccoli red.
oh my gosh, this is. You have like you should get one of those like what do you call them? Like where they connected to your head helmet, and then it just like points at your.
Dude, that would be so helpful. I was propping it up on this dehydrator and
Dude,
against the cabinet and like washing the pan out. And
I will buy you one. I will buy you one, man, just to do that. Yeah, me and Frank just all day, just kind of. We don't even really have pants on right now, and Frank is out there letting groceries, cooking for his family. He's in Costco, and
Frank's he's just being a real adult right now.
Yeah. For sure.
yeah.
Yeah, but thank you for making it out, man. Those are some great questions that you guys had, and I'm sorry we couldn't get to everyone's questions on the Q&A. We wanted to be respectful of his time and just hear him talk as much as he could. But thank you guys for coming.
Yeah.
And
I'll just add too that like Marlon is such a good teacher and mentor to kind of everyone around him, and I mean, in all seriousness, he probably needs help with his film to finish it. And Like you should reach out. You know, if you it'd be a great kind of win-win because he'd be able to help you out by mentoring and just supporting you and he's a passionate guy. I mean, just being around him is amazing. So
Cool.
bombard his email.
It's a good note. But yeah, with that, I'm gonna jump back onto some reviews again. And man, Frank, happy dinner. Trent,
Thank you.
weekend.
Yeah, Frank, you're making enough for all of us, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm gonna mail it out. It'll be in a dry ice bag.
Awesome.
All right.
All right. See you guys.
All right. Thank you guys. Take care, everyone. Have a
Later.
safe week. Stay safe. Wear your masks.
Yeah.
Yes. Please.
Watch Frank. Frank's a good example. Wear your mask.
Wear your masks. Bye, guys.
Later.
Take
All right.
care.
Bye, everybody.
See you guys.